appreciate everybody being here. Like I said, this is a debate night, so we have other considerations going on, but I'm glad that you all made the choice to be here with us tonight, and we can catch up with the debate later. So, and I'm really proud and really very happy to hear that Jeff Clements is on the call with us. For those of you who don't know, Jeff is the president and founder of American Promise. He's from Massachusetts, and he's written a fantastic book, Corporations Are Not People, and he's been sort of the inspiration to a lot of us to get involved in this work. And I really I appreciate so much Jeff's willingness to join the call and give us an update as to what's going on nationally. There's been some movement, some good news nationally, and we just got out of about a month ago, we finished up the National Citizens Leadership Conference in Washington, D.C. I was there along with Rod and Lynn Morrison from Cody, Powell area, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be at that conference. Jeff, why don't you give us a quick update as to what happened at the conference and where we are nationwide?
I sure will, Ken. Thank you so much, and thanks to everyone for having me on your call. It shall be good to hear your voice again. It was nice to see Ken and Lynn and Rod in Washington at the conference, and I can just tell you, with the work you're doing in Wyoming matters so much. Delivering over 20,000 signatures to the State House, getting through the Wyoming House, the work you did all around the state. People are talking about that. They were talking about that at the conference. It's the kind of work that it's not only inspires others, but really sends a message to our elected officials that the American people actually are doing the work necessary to put power back in the hands of the people instead of big money. And so it's exactly what American Promise was designed for. We're not telling you or anyone else what to do. We're trying to connect us together across the country and support each other to do good work that we're all capable of doing if we stick together and do it. So when we launched American Promise, it was only 3 years ago. One of the first people to sign on was your own former Senator, Al Simpson, on our advisory council, and he's been an inspiration. But each year we committed to doing at least one national conference to bring us together, because otherwise you can feel kind of alone. You wonder if it matters if you're out, in Wyoming gathering signatures, or here in Massachusetts, as we did, gathering signatures in the cold weather, or you're up in New Hampshire, or in Montana, and you're trying to push this big ball up the hill. If you don't know you're connected with other Americans all over the country doing this, it can get discouraging. So these conferences really are great to bring us together, to share the successes and the lessons learned, to share the best practices, and then to take our gains and bring them up to Capitol Hill and leverage that for votes to get the 28th Amendment that we're fighting for out of Congress and back to the states for ratification. And that's what we did this year, the National Citizen Leadership Conference. So we shared best practices. We celebrated. New Hampshire just became the 20th state. I think when I was last on the phone with you folks in Wyoming, I was trying to encourage you, because it was after the signature drive for the ballot fell just short, and I was reminding you, that was your first run in it. New Hampshire, they'd been pushing for 6 years to try to get it across the finish line, and they had gotten 65 town resolutions calling for the amendment. They'd pushed through the legislature. They'd done walks across the state. Well, they finally did it and won, and became with the passage through the legislature of a resolution calling for the amendment, became the 20th state. So one of the highlights of the conference was celebrating that. We did a march on Capitol Hill with all 20 state flags, New Hampshire in the lead, and went up to Capitol Hill with scheduled 150 meetings across the House and the Senate, Republicans, Democrats. I know Lynn, I don't know if you were there, Ken, met with some of the Wyoming delegation. I think, Ken, you had to get back to Wyoming, but Lynn was there and meeting with them. But we had 150 of those across Capitol Hill. So it really has impact. And as I said, I think Wyoming is going to be at the front of that parade at our next one, because if you guys are getting together to get this going now, I have no doubt, Wyoming is going to be one of the next states on the win board, and it's going to help a lot. So that's what happened at the conference. We heard from Republicans like Jim Rubins from New Hampshire, who's now joined our board, Democrats like Jamie Raskin, a lead in Congress on the amendment, an amazing discussion with Doris Kearns Goodwin, the historian, and her son Joe, who served in Iraq and Afghanistan, sharing stories of leadership and service and improbable wins in American history for we the people, and how we can get that done. And we shared a lot of really good best practices, and a couple of them I'll just mention for you, because I think it'll serve you well as you go into the next phase of your work. We have really booted up Business for American Promise and did a lot of work on that at the conference. We have a lot of good material. We can share it with you to help build the business community support, which I think will help in the legislature and elsewhere in Wyoming when local businesses get on board. Likewise, local Rotaries and civic groups and ag and farmer groups and veterans groups are all really good networks to bring the conversation about the amendment and reform and putting people in charge instead of money of our country. And we shared a lot of good ideas about how to do that. And at American Promise, we're developing good materials to get out to you to help you use and learn from you as well. So share back how it goes, because it's not just knocking on the door of legislatures, it's building the power and the network in the community. So you're getting new champions coming out of local civic groups or local veterans groups or local businesses, and that can really leverage your good hard work. So I could say a lot more, but I'll stop there and would be happy to answer any questions about the national strategy, about American Promise, or anything else for that matter. So just wanted to say thank you for having me here and share those thoughts, but again, happy to answer any questions you might have.
And just a reminder, if you want to ask a question, all you need to do is push a number on your keypad, and your hand will go up on our screen, and we can call on you. So are there any questions for Jeff at this point? Jeff, I have one question. So New Hampshire was number 20. I know there's efforts going on in Pennsylvania and elsewhere. Where do you think to be honest, we can't succeed until 2021. That's the next opportunity we have to go to the legislature. So we're probably not going to be next there, because I know there are other states working on it. What are the other states that are, you think, working really well and could be the 21st or 22nd states?
Great question. And 2021 is only 12, 13 months away now. So
right.
I think using some of these tools to go deeper into the communities and into the states and connecting and building the organization between now and then is a really smart idea. So
that's what we'll be talking about next. So go ahead.
Yeah. So just let us know how we can help on that, and that's what we're doing in other states. We're pushing and helping out with a ballot initiative in Alaska. If it passes, and that would be a 2020 win, and put Alaska on the winning column of the states. We're pushing hard in Pennsylvania, Virginia, Ohio, Michigan, sort of through the Midwest, Montana, Colorado, and New Mexico are all on the board. Would love to bring Wyoming, of course, and Utah up behind. But I think you're in the front runner group, whether it's 2021 or Alaska gets there in 2020. It's not so important exactly which month over the next 13, 14, 15 months the states come across, as compared to how important it is to build really strong, beefed up state campaigns. And that's what happened in New Hampshire. sometimes you win the first year and you actually didn't even have time to build up the kind of organization and networked group of people that are needed to really carry this through the long haul in ratification of the amendment after Congress. So, the challenge of the resolutions is a good thing, but the most important thing is building that strength. So those are some of the states, I think, that we're going to see next. Again, Alaska, Ohio, Michigan, Minnesota's up there, Virginia, Texas. We're doing a lot in Texas, and then in Pennsylvania, as I said.
And real quick, this is Shelby. Ken, do you want to give the folks on the call who might be newer here, just let them know just how close we got in this last session?
Yeah, and that'll be a nice transition to what I want to talk about, which is our plans going forward. In 2019, this is just this past January, February, we were able to get, we had a bill called the Free and Fair Elections Bill, which was introduced in both the Senate and the House, and we had an initial setback in the House or in the Senate, but the House then took it up and passed it with the final vote was, I think, 37 to 20 with 3 abstentions, 3 people who weren't there, one of whom was a very strong supporter of ours. So we know we have 38 votes in the House, which is almost 2/3 of the House, which was an amazing accomplishment. So it passed very, very handily in the House, went over to the Senate and went to the Minerals Committee. I'm sorry, this time it went to the Joint Election, the Senate Elections and Corporations Committee. And at that point, all 5 of those senators had initially voted no on the first Senate go-round, but we were able to convince 2 of them to vote yes to take up the House version of it, but it failed 3-2. But we got that close. We were within 1 more senator. We would have had another crack at it on the Senate floor. So we got really close in the legislature in 2019, and we know, having talked to several other senators who weren't on the Corporations Committee since then, we have a few more supporters as well. So we think we're within 3 or 4 senators right now of having a majority in the Senate as well. So we're pretty pumped about our chances going forward in 2021. Jeff, if you want to stick around and listen in, happy to have you stick around. But let me just go through what our plans are for the next couple of years, up to 2021. We're focusing on 2021 right now because the session starting this coming February is the short session, which is supposed to be focused only on budget items, and this is not a budget item, so it's not naturally going to be taken up. You can get non-budget items on for consideration if you get a 2/3 vote in each chamber to take up a non-budget item, and that's a heavy lift that we're not even going to try. So we're going to focus instead on laying the groundwork for success in 2021, which, given that we've had such a great success so far, we think our chances are pretty good to actually carry it all the way across the finish line in 2021. One thing to know, it's not a negative, it's positive, it's just a thing. Obviously, there's an election in 2020, and we know there's going to be some new faces in the legislature in 2020. So the 38 votes we can count now, not all of them will be there because some of them will retire. A few of them might lose their elections. And I know several who are going to be retiring. Some of those 38 I know will be moving on and not running for re-election. So we're going to have to do some work to get up to speed with the new legislatures, which you won't know until a year from now. So just a thing to be aware of. But the other thing that's good about going up in 2021, we will be fresh off of the 2020 election cycle. And it's every election cycle tends to give us new examples of the way dark money has played out, both in local and national politics, but more importantly, local politics. A lot of the legislators who will just have been elected will have dealt with some dark money issue in their campaign, and that's so we'll be able to capitalize on that. And I think that's how we got 38 supporters in the House, because they see this happening in local races now. So we'll be needing to pay attention during the next year to see what examples can we come up with about how dark money is already infecting the local legislative races. So we need to spend the next year gearing up, as Jeff suggested. We've got work to do. There's lots of things we can be doing, and here's what our plans are, and this is where all of you on the call can help us out. So a couple of things we want to do, and one thing we can do pretty much right now is to send thank you postcards to the 38 representatives and the 9 senators, actually now 11 senators, who have voted yes on some version of our bill. And so I have a spreadsheet with the yes votes listed with contact information, email addresses, physical addresses, and what they voted yes on. And we'd love to have thank you parties statewide. A card from a constituent is going to have a lot more impact than if I, as chair of Wyoming Promise, send them all out. I'm not a constituent of most of those people, but if their voters, their constituents, can send just a brief postcard saying thank you for your vote on House Joint Resolution 8 or Senate Resolution 8 or whatever they voted yes on, we can give that information to you and make a social event out of it. So if you can gather some people in your county who are constituents of these people who voted yes, make a brief party out of it and a social event, and all the information I have is on a spreadsheet. You can start handwriting these postcards and mail them, as many as you can get, to mail these thank you cards to our yes voters, to just remind them that we saw what they did, we appreciate it, and we're going to appreciate their support in 2021 when we come back with our next version of the bill. Another thing that we're doing, and again, some of you can help us out with this, is in February, when the legislature is back in session for the budget session, we're going to have an informational session in the legislature at the Capitol, probably either a coffee break or a lunch break, where we're going to be able to give them coffee or give them a donut or give them a bag lunch or whatever, whenever we get it scheduled, along with a flyer or brochure about what we're doing. And just again to remind them, we're still here, we're still working on this issue, and we're still going to be asking for your support come 2021. So that's what we're going to be working on coming up in the next in February. And the idea for the deliverable we're looking for in 2020 is we're hoping to get the legislature, or probably the Joint Corporations and Elections Committee, to select dark money as an interim study topic. So for those of you who aren't familiar with how the legislature works, because it's a part-time legislature, only meets for a couple of months each year. What they do a lot of their work over the summer and through the non-session months. They have these joint committees that will work on certain topics, and they're called interim topics. They're interim because these discussions happen in the interim between the sessions. And what they do at the very end of either their budget session or their general session, at the very end, the committees will decide what topics are we going to study this summer and work on. And if the committee takes up a matter, it's much more likely to be adopted because they will put the work into it over the summer. And this would be an easy one to do. It's not a very complicated bill. It's a pretty simple one, so we would hope that we would be able to get this selected as an interim topic. So the main thing we'll be asking for when we're in the legislature in February on our informational day is to ask the Joint Corporations Committee to select dark money as a study topic, and then we can put together our bill, probably the same one we've already done, and then go have them study it, take testimony on it, learn about it, amend it, modify it, whatever, and then hopefully the committee will adopt it. And if it's a committee bill, it's going to get heard and going to be prioritized during the session. So we've tried this twice and never gotten it selected as an interim topic, but given the success we had last session, I think there might be enough impetus now to get this over the top and get it chosen as an interim study topic, especially because it's an easy one to study. They've already heard a lot about it, and there's already a lot of support for it. So that's what we're working on in Cheyenne over during the short session coming up.
Go ahead. Jump in here real quick. I just want to give everybody the date for that because I know John Rivera and who is on the call and Vanda who was on the call. I don't see her on the call now. But if everybody wants to mark your calendars, if you're near or around Cheyenne on it looks like Monday, February 24th. That is the date for our that we have scheduled for the legislative coffee at this point. That might change, but I believe that's pretty close to what we're looking at.
Yeah, I think it was. And why don't you go ahead and unmute John in case John can give us more information about it. I think that the idea at this point is to have a coffee. That's the time that's available. There's a room in the Capitol building that they reserve for things like this. So we probably ought to get to, and their sessions generally tend to start at 10 o'clock. So we have to probably catch them on the way into the general session with a cup of coffee and information about what we're doing. But John, where are we with the planning on the coffee that you know about?
Actually, Vanda contacted a person she knows at the legislature, and they've scheduled the date. I don't know if it's going to be a morning thing. I think that's what Vanda was thinking about, is having a morning coffee after the committees meet prior to the commencement of these activities. So they'll have a chance to drop by and get a cup of coffee or whatever we're offering, along with a small brochure, a cardstock brochure that we'll hopefully have together by then, so that they can all take that with them, and hopefully will keep us in mind, and we can talk to them in the short time we'll have with them. And again, some of us will probably be sticking around to talk to them in subsequent days, so they're aware that we are around and we're still working on the issues. Right.
Thank you, John. I see that Margie Farias has her hand up, so I'm going to unmute Margie. Margie, what's your question?
Hi, Ken. I have a question about the postcards. When do we need to get that done by? Before this February date, or like before Christmas? What's the ideal thing?
I think I would think before the session begins. So things it might get lost in the holiday rush of things if we try and do it in December. There's nothing wrong with doing it in December, but for sure by January we need to have these done and mailed out. Because I think in January the legislators are going to be starting to focus more on getting back to business with their duties as legislators, and to start getting mail like this would probably be they'll get their attention more, I think, if they get these in like January.
Okay.
And Shelby, do you have any other thoughts?
Yeah, go ahead, Margie.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure, go ahead, Margie.
Is it worth sending postcards to other representatives who are not your own?
It's okay if you have a relationship with a legislator who's not your own. So, for example, I've got a pretty good relationship with Chris Rothfuss. He's not my senator, but I know him very well. So I'll probably send Chris a thank you card. So if you know the legislator, if you have some relationship with them, fine. Otherwise, it's best to be coming from a constituent.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you.
And this is Shelby, because just to get back to the postcard parties, because I've made a number of notes on this, because I want to be able to support everybody as much as possible. And that one thing we wanted to do was, for this call, set a strategic date. I thought actually January might be good, as they're gearing up to go into the session. I don't know if anybody has any other thoughts on that. But by January, I also thought that if we set a date, I thought it would be good statewide if we set a date for postcard parties across the state. There are other things that we can do as far as those parties are concerned. I would say invite those folks that you know that are interested in this issue to a party. We can also, at those parties, I can give you links to view a documentary. There's Big Sky, Big Money. There's also a Dark Money documentary done by PBS as well that you could view during those parties. But it's mainly like a social event, and it's geared to have fun. And I can send out all those folks that had aye votes on our legislation. As Ken mentioned, we have an Excel spreadsheet. I will send that out. But also, I think it's also important to let you know that we can send you information on your county, your area, and people that are on our statewide database that you can contact, other than just the folks that you know that are involved. And I was thinking of setting a date, or hoping to set a date. If anybody has any ideas on that date, Ken, do you have any suggestions on a date?
No, I don't have any. I don't think we need to specify a date, other than I think we should encourage everybody to do it in January, early January, so that the rush of holiday mail and holiday business stuff is behind us, and people will be getting back to work. I do think early, mid-January is an ideal time to do this. So I think we just make that and make all the materials available for all the counties. And everybody on this list, on this call, and lots of other folks who were active in the petition drive, we've got a long list of volunteers, I think, who very happily join in and make this happen. So I think we've got the workforce available, and let's take advantage of it.
My other thing to chime in here is if we want to do a uniform kind of postcard, we can, but I don't know if that's the best way to go about it. If people do their own postcards and we basically give some general information to put on those postcards, I don't know how you feel about that, Ken, or if anybody has any other thoughts about that.
No, I totally agree that it's best to have handwritten, unique postcards, because if a legislature gets 25 pre-printed postcards that say the same thing and just have a different signature at the bottom, that's not going to be nearly as impressive to them as if 25 different people took the time to handwrite 25 different thank you cards saying slightly different things in their own handwriting. That will show that those voters are much more invested in this issue, and that's going to have a lot more impact, I believe. So that's going to be the strategy, to have everybody handwrite. People only have to do a couple of them, because they only have a couple of people that they are the constituents of. So it shouldn't take that long, and that it shouldn't be that hard to do. But the idea is we need to get as many people to these parties as possible. If the legislators get one postcard, it's not going to have the same effect. We need to get as many postcards sent as possible.
Right. So let me just do a quick poll here from folks, if you don't mind. If you are interested in doing a postcard party with folks in your county, etc., could you just press 1 on your dial pad, please? And we'll see if okay, so okay, great. This is really helpful. Thank you. If anybody's interested in hosting this, let me know, and I'll write your names down, and that way I'll make sure that you get information. And this will all be in the recap email that we have. but I just want to make sure that we get those folks that are most interested in hosting one of these parties, and then I can be more in touch with you. So that was the big thing, so we can do unique postcards. If anybody needs any help with monetarily with postcards or with postage, you can be in touch with me, again, Shelby Shadwell, and we can help with that. It's actually going to help if we don't print our uniform postcards and send them out. If people buy their own, and that's much better.
Excellent.
That's all I have to do.
Thank you, Shelby. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is what happens next summer. As Jeff suggested, it's time to really crank up, and there's a lot we can be doing next summer. One thing the Wyoming Promise Inc. Board of Directors has a subgroup which hasn't been doing a lot of work lately because we took a little break this summer because we're trying to plan 2 years out. It seemed like we didn't want to hit things too early. We want to hit things a lot closer to the actual vote. But one of the things that we are going to be doing as the Board of Directors is contacting key legislators, especially senators, who we think we need to pick up a few more senators, and we have some ideas of who they might be. So we are going to next summer start making approaches to those senators, assuming that they are going to either they're not up for re-election or that they do win re-election. But we're going to try and work on that next summer to start building support within the Senate, and also providing some information to our supporting senators as to how to debate this in the Senate. The reason we failed in the early Senate vote went down pretty badly was 21-9, mostly because it got to the Senate floor quicker than we expected it to. We had a 4-1 positive vote in the Minerals Committee, and that happened very quickly. And then on first reading, before we were ready to go, there was a very organized opposition effort by a couple of key senators that we weren't prepared to counter. We had nobody there to really debate the positive side of it. So we're going to work on making sure we have senators prepared to speak up to the same three that spoke out against it. I think they're all going to be back. And so we know who our enemies are, and we'll be better prepared to respond to what we know their arguments are, because they've made their arguments already, and we'll be doing that kind of work over the summer. But the big push that I think everybody on this call can help out with is we're going to start trying to get local governments and nonprofit organizations to start passing resolutions. And now Jeff has indicated that was very important in the New Hampshire effort to get a lot of town councils on board. We want to do the same thing here. So we want to have people go to their local governments, the county commissioners, the city councils, and ask them to adopt resolutions in support of free and fair elections. Excuse me. So that's something that obviously works best if it's local people making the push. It's not going to be that helpful for a professor from Albany County to go to Rock Springs and tell them what's what. It's going to be much more effective to have folks in Rock Springs who can vote for those city council members to say, why don't you adopt this and have the debate and discussion, and hopefully start to build some momentum that way. We already do have the League of Women Voters of Wyoming on board with a resolution in support of what we're trying to do. But there's Kiwanis clubs, and there's all kinds of other service organizations and other sorts of nonprofit organizations, good government groups. If we can start getting some statements of support from those folks, along with local governments, that's going to be very helpful. So that's going to be our main focus starting probably early next year. Again, we don't want to wait until summer necessarily. We can start working on that January, February, and really start to push for those local government resolutions. So there's that work we can be doing over the summer, and we'll we're going to start having these kinds of statewide calls more frequently now that we're starting to gear back up for our next big push. And we'll have some more information we'll probably have a sample resolution that you can take to your city council and give you some help on how to lobby for that at the local level. And also, 2020 is an election year. We won't know who for sure is running for the state legislative races until early June. Because the filing period for state legislators is like the last 2 weeks of May into maybe early June. Once we have the list of who's running, we're going to want to start talking to all the candidates and invite them to be a supporter. And also we want to start having our volunteers go out to local town halls or forums or whatever campaign events are going on and start asking questions of the candidates. Do you support free and fair elections? Do you support getting money out of politics? And keep that issue on the front burner for all the local candidates. So that when we come to whoever wins, they'll know that it's an issue that is being talked about. So those are the kinds of things that we'll start working on next summer during the campaign season. So that's what our plans are going forward. Jeff, is there anything you want to comment on about what else we could be doing that I haven't thought of?
Plan. I'd just say anywhere along the way, if there's anything we at American Promise can do in terms of resources, bringing people in who could be helpful, sharing or connecting you with people you may not already be connected with in the American Promise Network who've sort of done it before and would be happy to share. I know everyone across the network learns a lot from all of you in Wyoming too, but any time, just let us know along the way how we can be helpful. Sounds like a great plan.
Okay, so with that, are there questions or comments? Who was just speaking? Okay, so I see Chris Corfanta has her hand up, so I'm going to unmute Chris. Go ahead, Chris.
Hi. First of all, thank you, Jeff, for all that you've done and everybody else on this call. But our group had a discussion group about your book, and that was very useful. And your those YouTube video clips of you have been helpful. One thing that I think our state is struggling with is getting together just a quick and easy brochure. There's probably several of us on this call who've been batting around ideas. And I've been on some of the resources on America Promise, but I don't see any that would just be examples of quick and easy brochures. We're even having trouble with calling it big money or dark money or both. So any help there would be useful, especially the wordage and getting it just, tailored so it's not too wordy.
Yeah, it's a great question. A great challenge is always the communication of this in a clear way. You've had brochures in the past, I think, haven't you, with Wyoming Promise?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
It was wordy.
Yeah.
But
do you want?
And it was also tailored to the initiative. The fact that we're not doing an initiative right now, so we have to change it anyway because it's kind of outdated from what we were doing with that brochure originally. Yeah.
Would you mind just emailing me that, and I'll connect it with our Melissa Goff, who does a lot of our communications. I know we have a national brochure so that we use, but it would be good to sort of customize it for you. And I can see what we have in our sort of comms area with Melissa Goff. Was it Crystal who was asking that?
That was Chris Corfanta.
Chris, yeah. So thank you for your kind comments. If you would just shoot me an email and let me know where you are with what you have already, and then I'll loop in Melissa, and we'll make sure we're working with you to kind of share some of the best practices from other states, and then you guys decide what works best there. But we might have some, new quotes or some simple phrasing that you might like, and that would be great. So my email is jeffc@americanpromise.net, jeffc@americanpromise.net, and then I'll loop in people from our team, so you'll be connected directly and can work towards the most effective brochure.
Thank you. Marge, I hope you heard that. She's the chair of our messaging committee.
Yeah. And I'm going to just very quickly unmute John Rivera. I know John and Chris are both on the subcommittee of Wyoming Promise, Inc. that's working on this. John, is there anything you want to add to what your committee is working on and what kind of help you could use?
Actually, we're getting closer, but we just haven't been able to meet this month. In fact, we were going to meet, I believe, last week, but we decided that we were probably bothering everybody too much with too many phone calls, so we delayed that phone call. But I think that Chris's request is probably a very worthwhile one, and I think that we would like to see what is done by American Promise, and see. We welcome any help we can get, and I think they have a lot of experience that they can probably share with us, and we would benefit from that. But I think we're going to have to crank down and start getting going on this, so that we can get something done in a timely fashion. And actually, Margie's been working a lot harder than I have on this. Maybe she can give some more insight into what she foresees for us as a committee.
Okay, and Margie has her hand up. So, Margie, you are now unmuted. What can you add to the conversation?
First of all, I've got a question. After our last board meeting call, I sent out an email with an attachment to all the board members and to everybody that's been working on this with the messaging committee. And I did not receive any feedback from anyone. And it essentially laid out some copy for this rack card that we talked about during that last call. Again, nobody had anything to say, so I can resend it if you want. Did anybody receive it? I'm curious.
Yes, I did receive it, and I apologize for not having gotten to it yet. John, did you receive it?
Yes, I did, and I think it's a good start. I may have a few comments on it, but I think it's a good start. But I'd like to also see what American Promise might be able to provide to us, so that we can see if we can incorporate.
I agree, absolutely. I just needed to know what people thought, and I didn't hear anything. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that I have put some time into this, and I feel like we're pretty close, but I would like to see what American Promise has to contribute. That would be great.
Okay, and I see that Chris has her hand up again. Chris, you want to add anything to this conversation?
Gosh, I wonder if you I did give you feedback. I just gave you more information, not feedback. So
right, I don't know. I have not read all of that. I have not read all of that.
But you did get my response. Sometimes emails get into
Yes. I apologize.
You did get that.
Recognizing that.
Okay.
I guess I was concerned about whether the board had received this information. So
yeah, maybe just send it to Jeff and have him take it from there and take a look and see.
Sure, I can do that.
Great, and thanks for all the work you've put into it. I wish I were a wordsmith. I'm horrible at it.
Well,
but while I'm on,
yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I apologize that I haven't had a chance to look at it. I've been kind of busy with the faculty senate stuff and presidential searches and everything else. So I've been kind of swamped this semester, but I will make an effort to take a look at it very soon too. Okay, I see Sylvia Bagdonis has her hand up. So Sylvia, you now have the mic.
Thank you. I just wanted to acknowledge I had received that information, and I will look it over again in the morning. Since it's snowing, I probably won't get out in the morning, and try to narrow down my thoughts. But I wondered if Jeff or does someone keep a track of what each state's outreach materials are? I just thought maybe instead of reinventing the wheel, we could ask New Hampshire or some of the recent states what had worked most effectively for them to garner support.
Yeah, Sylvia, that's what I was going to do when I got your starting point. When I said I would loop in our comms team, we don't have it up on a database anywhere. We probably should have it somewhere where it's accessible for all of us to just access into. But we had the ballot campaign in Massachusetts. It's all different, of course. It's a different goal. Sometimes the ballot initiative might be a little different. The wording, like people govern, not money, versus Wyoming Promise. But I think we can learn a lot at New Hampshire, other places. So that's what I'll loop in Melissa Goff. She'll pull together some different examples, and we'll go back and forth a few times with you until it's where you all want it.
Yeah, I
Excellent.
think the struggle for me has been what are the really key words that catch people's attention? Because some of the brochures and things I've looked at, they're just very wordy and long paragraphs, and nobody's going to read that. But if you hand it to somebody and they're like walking down the street or whatever, there's got to be something that really catches their attention.
Yeah, for sure. And everywhere is a little different, so you'll want to customize it to Wyoming. But, we'll pull in some of the Montana materials from a few years ago, and, they had a nice good Western theme, like, give big money and boot, and a picture of a cowboy boot, and things like that. So every state will do it its own way, but I think we'll find some good common themes that will be helpful for you.
Yeah, I just want to caution everybody that even within Wyoming, the message that you want to convey may differ depending on who you're talking to. So, for example, one of the things I learned at the National Citizens Leadership Conference last month in D.C. was when you were talking to legislators, we probably don't want to say the words Citizens United, because the official Republican platform is the Republican Party loves Citizens United. So we need to stay away from saying that, because that identifies us as a Democratic group, because if we hate Citizens United, we must not be Republicans. So the way we have to approach a legislature is to say, we're opposed to dark money. Oh, yeah, because they can say, I'm opposed to dark money, too, because there was dark money involved in my race. So we need to tailor our message depending on who we're talking to. Now, an ordinary voter may understand what Citizens United is and may hate Citizens United. So there's different messages depending on who you're talking to, and that's something we need to be very cognizant of as we develop. I know that we want to have a brochure to give to the legislators for sure, and one of the things we need to do there is make sure we don't say Citizens United, because that might be a trigger to trigger their opposition.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Ken. And, we have materials for the Rotary. We have really good materials for business people, and those are all different.
Right.
And on your Citizens United point, I couldn't agree more. In fact, even talking to most voters, unless you're talking to really activist progressives, they need some education on what Citizens United is. They don't need any education on the problem of undue influence of money in our political system. So, we've really not seen much value anymore of spending a whole lot of time emphasizing Citizens United for anybody.
Right. Exactly. Okay, good. So are there other questions, comments? I don't see any hands up at the moment.
Just real quick, this is Shelby here, and I just wanted to say a couple of other things, because I got to jump off the call soon and put a couple of kiddos to bed. I know Chris has her hands up right now, but I just want to get through a couple of things, and I might have to jump off. I do want to again thank Jeff Clement for being here. It means so much to us, Jeff, that you've been on this call. I do want to say, if for those folks that are on, Chris Corfanta, Melody Nielsen have done county Wyoming Promise pages that have been really successful, and we post them to the statewide Facebook page. So if anybody else in any other county wants to create your own Wyoming Promise a Facebook group, it's actually really helpful for sharing information. I share a lot from the American Promise Facebook group, and it's really helpful in just keeping awareness up for those that do use Facebook. I also want to say one other thing is fundraising, since I'm on that committee. I would say if you're able to donate or encourage folks to donate in your county, that's great. I'm giving $28 a month myself right now, and you can access that on our website. You don't have to give that much, but if we do have a monthly kind of recurring donation eventually, that's going to help us. We do have funds right now, but if we want to do what we did in the last legislative session in 2021, we still need to be thinking ahead if we do want to do what we did with our wonderful lobbyist who was very helpful. So that'll be a future thing that we think about and we talk about. I will be sending a follow-up email to this, just kind of setting out what we talked about and giving dates, talking about the postcard parties and what we're going to do about that, also including the aye votes from the last legislative session so we can contact them. I want to encourage anybody to contact me, shelby.shadwell@gmail.com. If you have any questions or concerns, you can also do info@wyomingpromise.org, and I'll get any emails you send. And last of all, since I do have to jump off, thank you so much. You're American heroes and Wyoming heroes, and I'm again glad to hear from Jeff. At the national level, we're not alone out here in Wyoming. Sometimes it may think like that. We may think that, but we're definitely not. So I appreciate all of you.
Thank you, Shelby. So you inspire me, all of you. So let's keep rolling.
Thank you, Shelby. Thank you, Jeff. Chris Corfanta has her hand up. So, Chris, you have the mic.
Hi, it's back to the idea of postcard parties. We've already done it a couple times to our legislature and one legislator in our area. And I'm concerned that we don't have people in other counties or even enough in the counties that have a lot of representatives to get something going because all of them need thanked. And if we don't have people thanking them in those counties, we ought to be organizing, people in those counties. So we were going to do it again and send thanks to all of them from us. And I'm hearing that you probably don't want that. But my concern is some of them might not get any thank yous.
I don't think that a thank you card from a non-constituent is going to hurt anything. It's going to not be as effective as one from a constituent. I mean, that's my opinion. If you want to start sending thank yous out to other people, it cannot hurt. It might help a little bit, but a more effective approach would be from a constituent. What our plan is we had county teams for the canvas effort, and we know the county team leaders. Several of them are on this call right now. We're going to go back to those county team leaders to see if they could organize. We didn't have every county covered. We had the major counties covered, and that's where most of the yes votes came from. So if we were able to get all the county teams back together for a one-day thank you party, coffee klatch, whatever you want to call it, that would be great, and that's our plan to try and leverage the volunteer base that we already have. Now, whether that's going to happen in every county, I don't know. We're going to have to do some cajoling and some encouragement and support, but I think we'll be able to get a lot of counties to do that because it's an easy thing to do. There's not a lot of if you're doing it just for your own legislator, it's not going to take a lot of time, and we should be able to get people to do it fairly readily, I'm hoping. So that's something we're going to start working on between now and January, and hopefully we'll have that in place to get those cards sent out sometime in January.
And this is Shelby once more. I'm gonna push back just slightly on what Ken said. I think yes, of course, for your representative, send those thank you cards out for sure. I don't think it necessarily hurts at all to send out cards to everyone who voted yes on this. If I was a representative and I got a card from somebody in Uinta County, even though I'm an Albany County representative, I'm not, but if I was, I would take that into account, especially if it was handwritten. So I'm a little more in favor of writing everyone who voted yes, especially if they're your representative, but even if they're not, I'm a little more inclined to get them all postcards, just to remind them of what they did, what the legislation was, what our goals are. That's my opinion.
Thanks.
Okay. Are there any other questions, comments, thoughts? Not seeing any hands going up, so we're just about at the 1 hour mark for the call. I do appreciate everybody being on this call. I'm excited to get back into it. We did take a little time off to kind of catch our breath, I thought, because we all worked so hard on the petition drive and then through the legislative session. We all deserved a little bit of a break to catch our breath, especially because the big push is not going to be again until January of 2021. But now that we got a plan for it. It's now time to get going on laying the groundwork that's going to lead us to success in January 2021. Things to do, specific things we can all be working on right now. And I'm so excited to see everybody on this call ready to roll up their sleeves and get back to work. And we will have these calls, not probably every month, but every other month perhaps, for a while until we really get things rolling again. So look forward to working with everybody once again, and thank you all for attending. Jeff or Shelby, any closing words?
No, thank you, Ken. Thanks to everybody for all your hard work. We're really building something that'll be a lasting foundation for what the country needs for long after we're gone. So this is big, big work, and it's wonderful to be in it with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
And
Shelby?
Yeah, and I'm just going to say, everybody stay strong. We're kind of climbing Mount Everest, but it seems really hard until you get to the top, and then you're like, well, we got there. So keep that in mind.
Thank you, everybody, and look forward to working with you, and keep watching your emails. Good night now.
Night, everybody.
You are currently the only person in this conference.